Welcome to the Paul Levette Show, the show where truth meets bold patriotism. I am your host, Paul Levette, a proud and unapologetic Black American conservative. Today, I'm going to dive into California Governor Gavin Newsom's statement to Charlie Kirk regarding men and female sports. We will begin this journey by getting back to the science and biology basics that you may have forgotten. Before we dive in, I want to be clear about the language I will be using. Throughout this discussion, terms like genetic sex male and genetic sex female will refer to the biological sex as defined by chromosomes at conception. This is not to diminish or disrespect anyone's gender identity. My goal is to thoughtfully discuss the science and the policy implications around sports participation, focusing on Governor Newsom's recent comments and the ongoing debate in America. I value and respect all peoples, regardless of gender identity, and invite respectful, informed conversation in the comments. When I use terms like sex, I am referring to biological attributes, chromosomes, anatomy, and when I use the term gender, I am referring to social and psychological identity. Also note, I will use genetic sex when discussing biology and gender when discussing identity or social context. The title of today's show is Governor Newsom's Controversial Position on Men and Women's Sports. Our show outline for today is Governor Newsom and Charlie Kirk have a conversation. When is a person's genetic sex determined? What are the physical attributes of males versus females? What are sports and what is required to be successful in them? Examples of biological males competing against biological females. Now you have the information. Can you be intellectually honest? So, is Governor Newsom right? And then we'll finish up with our summary and conclusion. First, please remember that this content is for informational and commentary purposes, not targeted at any individual or group. In the past 4 years, the whole issue of biological males in female sports has come to a head. The issue is so paramount an issue that Democrats have canonized their support in favor of biological men and boys in women and girls sports. Republicans, on the other hand, are vehemently against biological men and boys in women and girls sports. Those dastardly Republicans have staked their position on science and biology, while Democrats' position is firmly rooted in good feelings and emotions. You can use your critical thinking and intellectual honesty to decide which party has the correct view. I will be providing more information for you to consider later. Now, exactly what did Governor Newsom say to Charlie Kirk regarding this issue? Note that any copyrighted material used in this episode is under fair use and is for educational, critique, or commentary purposes.
I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that.
Wow. So why would one of America's most liberal, progressive Democrat governors speak truth to this issue? Yes, he is positioning himself to run for president, and that has caused him to consider where most Americans are on this issue. To be clear, according to Gallup, a large majority of Americans now, 69%, then in 2021, 62%, say athletes should only be allowed to compete on sports teams that conforms to their birth gender. Here, gender is synonymous with genetic sex. So now we have to ask ourselves, why does Governor Newsom believe that it is deeply unfair To answer this question, we must take a look at the science and biology basics. At conception or fertilization, the genetic material, 23 chromosomes from the father, fuses with 23 chromosomes from the mother. This creates a human zygote with a full set of 46 chromosomes, which begins to divide and make a fully developed baby. This process takes about 40 weeks. So looking at the featured items that we're concerned with on what happens at conception, starting with genetic sex, determined by the father, and it's either XX for female or XY for male. Then genetic makeup, our unique combination of genes from both parents, and inherited traits such as eye color, hair color, blood type, and genetic disorders. The most important thing here is to explain why Governor Newsom and 69% of Americans believe that it is unfair for men and boys to be in women and girls' sports is genetic sex. The two things that we need to consider which is genetic sex versus gender. So, what is genetic sex versus gender? What is sex and gender? Sex here refers to the biological attributes, chromosomes, anatomy, hormones. This is binary and determines a person's physical attributes such as appearance, physique, and strength. Gender is non-binary and is shaped by cultural, social, and psychological factors and varies across societies and over time. Once again, none of the information here is to be construed as medical advice or treatment. What we see on this side is that genetic sex is physical and gender is psychological. Also note, before 2000, gender versus sex, in most medical literature and social discourse, gender was commonly used interchangeably with sex, or was understood as a social expression of biological sex, male or female. Physical differences between the genetic sexes, aka men and women. Now that we have established what sex, the physical, and gender, the psychological, are, let's look at the physical sense. That is where biology, science, and physics meet in the real world. Biology tells us that a father and a mother both contributes 23 chromosomes at conception, so that each of us have 46 chromosomes. These 46 chromosomes is our unique individual genetic code. This genetic code is in every cell of our body and defines all of our physical attributes. At conception, biology divides us into two subsets, XX being female and XY being male. Now, let's look at another building block of our discussion, the physical attribute differences between males and females. Males and females have notable physical differences in bones, muscles, and strength. Males typically have a greater bone density and more muscle mass, and generally higher physical strength. Females tend to have a higher percentage of body fat, less muscle mass, and lower bone density on average. A quick summary. We have now established that genetic sex is determined at conception. Because of the sex assigned, and as we develop and grow, physical attributes will be expressed accordingly. Post-year 2000, gender is defined as a social or psychological construct. Before the year 2000, gender in medical texts was synonymous with genetic sex. Now we can pivot back to why Governor Newsom and 69% of Americans who believe that it is unfair for men and boys to be in women and girls' sports. Next, we look at the definitions of sports. That is our next building block in our discussion. Objective definitions of sports. Dictionary.com defines sports as an athletic activity requiring skill and physical prowess, and often of a competitive nature, such as racing, baseball, tennis, golf, bowling, etc. Cambridge Dictionary defines sports as a game, competition, or activity requiring physical effort and skill that is played or done according to rules for enjoyment or as a job. Oxford Learner's Dictionary defines sports as activity that you do for pleasure and that needs physical effort or skill, usually done in a special area according to fixed rules. The Britannica Dictionary defines sports as a contest or a game in which people do certain physical activities according to a specific set of rules and compete against each other. Sports are organized competitive physical activities or games that follow rules and aims to improve physical abilities, providing enjoyment and determining winners. Research shows that in both general and medical contexts, sports are defined as physical activities involving physical exertion and skill, usually requiring some degree of athleticism. Competition. Participants and teams compete against one another under agreed rules to achieve a designated objective or win. Measurements of performance. Outcomes are determined by measurable results such as goals, points, times, distances, etc. Now that we have a detailed explanation of what sports are, let's take a look at genetic sex males who have competed against genetic sex females. Real-world undeniable facts. Now, let's look at some prominent and notable genetic sex males and their performance against males and females in sports. This discussion is about competitive fairness in sports and is not intended as a judgment on anyone's character, humanity, or personal identity. First, let's take a look at the collegiate level. Leah Thomas is probably the most notable genetic sex male and brought the issue to the nation's forefront. Thomas competed with and defeated Riley Gaines in swimming. Riley Gaines is a genetic sex female who was a 12-time NCAA All-American. She competed for the University of Kentucky's NCAA swim team. Now, let's look at Leah Thomas's pre-transition performance against other males. Thomas's performance as a male in the 2018 and 2019 season. Thomas ranked 554th in the 200-meter freestyle, 65th in the 500-meter freestyle, and 32nd in the 1650-meter freestyle among male college swimmers. Thomas's performance as a transgender female in the 2021 and 22 seasons. Thomas ranked 5th in the 200-meter freestyle, 1st in the 500-meter freestyle, and 8th in the 1650-meter freestyle among female college swimmers. These results were dramatic and a clear personal benefit to Thomas. Additionally, consider the negative impact on the genetic sex females who were displaced by Thomas, lost scholarships and awards. Now, let's take a look at the K through 12 athletes' performance. I am going to look at Adriana Yearwood and Terry Miller. Both are from Connecticut, who competed in the 2017 and 2018 seasons for their high school track and field teams. Performance as a male. Competed in boys' events before transition. No state titles recorded. performance as transgender females. For Miller, in the 2018 and 2019 Connecticut State Championship in girls 100-meter and 200-meter sprints set state records. For Yearwood, managed multiple state-level girls sprint titles, consistent high placements in the 100-meter and 200-meter sprints. This is a stunning difference in placements. Even more concerning is that their victories have been cited as taking 15 girls' state championship titles and over 40 opportunities for higher level competition from genetic sex female track athletes in Connecticut between 2017 and 2018. Will you continue to lie to yourself? Now's the time to consider the facts honestly and reflect upon whether your views are based on evidence from biology and science or shaped more by your personal feelings. Let's review the science and biology one last time. I provided you with how males and females get their genetic sex and their chromosomes. Next, I discussed that chromosomes are how we get our physical attributes. Then we looked at the attributes biology gives to males versus females. From there, we looked at the specific physical attributes such as genetic sex males having greater upper and lower body strength, much greater muscle mass, larger bones, and a wider shoulders than genetic sex females. This is not just me making assertions. We learned this basic fundamental biology in middle and high school. At least we used to. With this foundation, it was necessary to look at the definition of sports. Dictionary.com defines sports as an athletic activity requiring skill or physical prowess and often of a competitive nature. The American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language defines prowess as 1. Superior skill or athletic ability, superior strength, courage, or daring. From the standpoint of skill that is based on physical attributes or physical activity, men are at a greater advantage because of the hormone testosterone. Although testosterone is found in both males and females, it is 10 to 20 times higher in genetic sex males than genetic sex females, per the National Institute of Health and Nava Health data. Finally, we looked at the performance of genetic sex males who competed against other genetic sex males and then their performance against genetic sex females. In all the cases we found, genetic sex males went from unranked or poorly ranked when competing against other genetic sex males, but became number one in most cases, but at least ranked in the top 10 against genetic sex females, depending on sports. Once again, here's what America's most liberal, progressive Democrat governor has to say regarding genetic sex males and genetic sex female sports.
I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that.
Per the Gallup organization, 69% of Americans say that athletes should only be allowed to compete on sports teams that conform to their birth gender. For the 31% of Americans that believe it is okay for genetic sex males to compete against genetic sex females, I want to remind you of Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 and of its key objectives. First, the core statutory language reads, "No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participating in, be denied the benefit of, or be subjected to discrimination under any educational program or activity receiving federal assistance." Notice the word sex in the statute. Remember that sex, XX and XY, is assigned at conception. Notice they did not use the word gender. That is a social construct. One of Title IX's key objectives is making sure that women and girls have equal access to education programs, resources, and opportunities. Title IX was created because education and sports opportunities were being denied to females because men were perceived as better, ostensibly because of the physical attributes and abilities they express due to their male genetics versus females. By using the word sex in the statutory language of Title IX, the federal government recognized the physical differences between males and females. Its intent was not to mix male and females on the same sports teams. They wanted to maintain female sports as standalone bodies, and that the educational classes of college, of course, would be integrated. The positive side of Title IX: an explosion in participation. In 1972, before Title IX, just over 300,000 girls competed in high school sports, and fewer than 30,000 women participated in college athletics. By 2012, more than 3 million girls played high school sports, a tenfold increase. And over 190,000 women competed in college sports, over 6 times as many in 1972. So, for the Democrat Party and the 31%, you can hold on to your feelings, but be honest and say that you are against Title IX and the fairness for females it's brought. In essence, you are pushing a pre-1972 Title IX worldview for females in K through 12 and college sports. Shameful, but if you made it this far in the episode, you definitely have no excuse for your position. Governor Newsom is correct in his assertion that it is deeply unfair for males to be in female sports. I have substantiated his assertions with biology and science. No one can rationally deny or dispute the biology and science presented above. I want to thank you for sticking around this long. I know this was a heavy episode, but it was very important to link it logically together from beginning to end. So once again, thank you, and remember to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell. Thank you very much, and until next time.